Hello and welcome back, guys. We are here for the next league. After a previous league of Esper Drago, where we were playing chess with our opponent instead of Magic. And don't get me wrong, that was fun, and I do intend on revisiting Esper at some point in time, maybe as kind of a minority video on this channel, or maybe with a greater focus, depending on how things go in the future. But as for right now, we are back here with good old faithful Amulet Titan. We're ready to try to farm some value out of these leagues, try to get a 3-2 or 4-1, or heavens forbid, a 5-0. That would be fantastic. The list that you have right in front of your face is one that I think has very good potential in going 4-1 or 5-0. That is sort of the point here. I have done this before in previous leagues, but I'm going to say it again now. We are going for the throat. This is serious time. Hopefully not making a ton of terrible misplays and all that kind of thing. And we're going for the throat here, so no mercy on our opponent. We do have a few interesting things going on here. We have a full 9 copies of Bounce Lands instead of the usual 8 that I play. I think having the extra Bounce Land makes opening hands a little easier to keep or mulligan based on the possibility of drawing a Bounce Land or having a Bounce Land. Oftentimes I find that a single Bounce Land is enough to unlock a hand's potential almost entirely. And at the expense of this, we had to cut 1 Castle Garenbrig, which I think is acceptable. I am a firm believer in Garenbrig, and I see some lists, adding other cards like Karn the Great Creator, or like splashing colors, and going down to as many as 2 Castle Garenbrigs, which I think is ridiculous. In some of those lists, it makes sense, as Garenbrig is most powerful with Azusa as well, and most lists are only playing 1 Azusa. I like having a maximum density of 3 drops, especially to go along with our Arboreal Grazers, which let us cast our 3 drops on turn 2. Off of just a Bounce Land and a single untapped source for turn 1 Grazer. And that definitely comes up a lot, and thus I like playing at least 2 copies of Azusa. I would probably play more if I could fit them, but I wouldn't know what to cut anyways, so that said, we're going to get a lot of extra usage out of this Bounce Land here, and 1 Garenbrig should be enough to do the job. Don't really want to draw this one in multiples, even though they do tap for green to activate each other, as interesting as that is. Nothing else is particularly different here. In the sideboard, we do have 2 copies of Negate as the counterspell of choice here. I briefly considered Mystical Dispute, but Negate will come in more usefulness against Ad Nauseam and against, like, Tron, for example, and those are matchups that I want to hedge against a little bit. The 2 mana versus 1 mana may not be a particularly large deal in the control matchups, and I do think Negate has more wide usage than something like Veil of Summer. Negate gives us a little bit of game against some of those combo decks that can be difficult matchups otherwise. Of course, we have our beautiful, pristine copies of Relic of Progenitus here. Wouldn't leave with them not in my sideboard. And the rest, like I said, is pretty standard. We got our Dismembers, Beast Withins. You all know what's good. And one thing I will mention is I could see 3 Beast Withins being too many, and maybe we should be cutting down to 2. I'm not sure what other card should be added, so if you have suggestions for that particular sideboard slot, then let me know in the comments. I could see maybe a Tireless Tracker, which hasn't been as good as of late. Obstinate Baloth, perhaps, might be one to consider. Regardless, I'm just going to rock the 3rd Beast Within because I like Beast Within, so regardless, I will see you guys in match 1 here in just a second. I will admit, since I filmed the last league on Esper Control, I feel like it's been quite a while since I've played Amulet, so I wonder if I will feel any less familiar with the matchups and the lines, or if I'll just jump back into it like normal, like nothing ever happened. Alright, we have our match. Let's get in here and start the Slaughterfest, hopefully. Playing against I Play Bad Decks. I just have to tell them I love their username. And we are immediately greeted with a hand that has not enough lands, in my humble and honest opinion. Even if we were to top deck another land to cast this Explorer, we'd still need to top deck a Bounce Land and like either another Bounce Land or like an Amulet or something. This is clearly a mulligan. And here we go. This is why we mulligan. Now we just need to top deck a Titan, and this hand's looking pretty fine. We'll keep for sure. And I think we're putting one of these Valakut's on the bottom. We'd rather have a turn 1 Amulet here for a turn 2 Azusa, so we need the Ghost Quarter. And, I mean, I guess there was an argument for bottoming Grazer, but a little bit of mana ramp never hurt anybody. Our opponent plays Grove of the Burn Willows, so this immediately makes me think of Red-Green Eldrazi. Do we want to drop our Amulet here, or Cavern Naming Beast to get Arboreal Grazer into play? Both lead to the same final outcome, which is a Azusa on turn 2. I could see a world where our opponent plays something that we need to block with Grazer, but if our opponent just drops Eldrazi Temple Mana Reshaper, we can't really block the Mana Reshaper with our Grazer anyways, because our Grazer just dies. I mean, I guess we could. I don't know, it's kind of weird. I think maybe we'll be better served just by putting the Amulet into play here. I mean, next turn we can go Cavern of Souls, Azusa, Ghost Quarter, Valakut. Actually, I suppose if we lead on Grazer here, we lose access to Bounce Land, so we most certainly want to play our Amulet here. And that is what I'm going to do. Amulet. And we'll pass it back. That's a huge thing to consider. We are going to need this Bounce Land, I think. Inkmoth Nexus. That's not one that I expected. Ooh, we're playing against some sort of affinity deck. We have Steel Overseer. Okay. I see what you're doing, opponent. I wonder what other cards our opponent has in store for us. We have a Telarius, which means we have a Titan, and that's fantastic news. Alright, here's our Azusa. We'll play Growth Chamber into Growth Chamber Grazer, perhaps? Yeah, that seems fine. This way we get to play our Grazer, continue to make our land drops here, transmute Telarius this very turn, and set up for a Titan this upcoming turn. We can yield to this one. We'll get a Valakut into play, I suppose. Don't see why not. And here we'll transmute, get our Summoner's Pact, and pass it back. Our opponent says, I appreciate it. I see you are playing a good deck. And my opponent is just gold in the chat over here. I'm going to drive this over so that you can actually see it, if it'll let me. Uh-oh. Well, the words bleed onto the edge. I wonder if there's a way for me to fix that. Is there a way to pop chat out or something? Whatever. Sorry. Conversation between me and my opponent only. We got a Arcbound Worker coming into play. Okay. And Arcbound Ravager. Things are looking a little difficult here, not gonna lie. I think we might be able to handle this. We do have a main board Engineered Explosives. Or we could just, draw a Dryad. Yeah, we have 6, 7, 8, down to 5 to play the Dryad, up to 7, which is enough to pact for a Titan as well, so we should be able to do all the things this turn. That Dryad was the best possible top deck. We might even be able to afford to pick up a non-Simic Growth Chamber land here, but I just don't want to do it. I like bounce lands too much to give them up. Here's a Dryad. Here's a Growth Chamber once again. Sure. I guess we could have played the Cavern and had the same general effect, but, that's okay. We also might be able to Ghost Quarter ourselves at the end of this sequence, so... And I do want to point out, I was not the one who said that we're playing a good deck. It was our opponent. They said it first. You heard it from them, not me. Alright, yes. Here, we'll go ahead and get another Valakut and a Hanweir. We'll do the whole hasting thing. We'll attack and get a bunch of Valakut triggers. And that should be the game. This guy, right here. Alright, and our opponent knows what's up. Let's go sideboarding. Why, hello, Engineered Explosives. And Force of Vigor. And Reclamation Sage. Those all seem pretty good. Dismember could be good as well. I mean, it's not fantastic against Arcbound Ravager. It might be very good against Walking Ballista or Arcbound Ravager if our opponent is playing like a Hardened Scales version, which is not too crazy to think about, as we did see a Grove of the Burn Willows from our opponent. I think we probably need Dismember. I don't love it, but it's fine. Maybe we want one Beast Within, maybe not. I mean, this can hit something like Hardened Scales, but I guess not. Turn Timber seems a little too random for me. Bajuka Bog is probably not necessary unless our opponent happened to show us Luris, which I'll go check now. It looks like they did not reveal Luris. Okay. So, presumably, we don't have that to think about. Explore's a little slow, so we can trim on those. I mean, they help us dig towards an engineer explosives, so I don't hate them that much, but Pact Negation is obviously terror bad here. We can get rid of a Cavern of Souls, I think. And yeah, is that it? Are we sure we don't want Turn Timber over Cavern? I think we definitely want Turn Timber at least over Cavern of Souls. And maybe there's even another land that we could afford to trim. I could even see maybe having another Turn Timber over Explorer. That way we just have guaranteedly more Titan top decks. Is that something worth considering? I mean, theoretical Titan top decks, that is. I don't know, I kind of like Explore better. Speeding up our hand towards blowing an Engineered Explosives earlier rather than later seems pretty good. Yeah, let's just submit this way. Let's not overthink it too much. We have one Turn Timber. One is good. We have Amulet and some bounce lands. We have Grazers. We'll definitely keep this. If our opponent has Nature's Claim for our Amulet, then we'll just be sad, but... I mean... what else can be done about it? I didn't even notice that they're playing the Pathway lands. And of course we see Hardened Scales. Not surprised. More bounce lands is, that's a thing that we could draw. I don't think it's particularly good for us, but... let's see if our opponent has the claim. Llanowar Reborn, Arcbound Worker. Okay, that's all fine and good. That is a 4/4 Arcbound Worker. Okay, so we have 3, 4, 5. We're one short of getting Titan into play this turn. So let's just play out our Gruul Turf. We might want to hold on to this Growth Chamber in combination with our Grazers to be able to transmute Engineered Explosives. And yeah, we'll just pick up the Hanweir here. We'll pass it back. I am not worried about taking 4 damage from this worker. I'd rather accelerate out my Titan a turn faster, so there's no reason to deploy Grazer here. I suppose playing a Grazer to get this Battlements out into play is basically the same effect as going up 1 mana? I don't know. The Ozolith, okay. Clock for 4, okay. Engineered Explosives on 1 is looking pretty good right now. Castle Garenbrig. So we can play Castle, float with Gruul Turf, play Grazer, float with Growth Chamber. Then we'd end up being one short of casting Titan off of activating Garenbrig because we wouldn't have enough green. So that's 4, 5, 6. Yeah, this should be able to do it. To maybe... let's go ahead and play out a bounce land because we know that we're gonna have to have a bounce land in play here. So okay, so we've played our land drop. So we play Grazer, float 2, play Grazer, float 2. We do still have enough green. If we play Garenbrig, whatever. I don't trust myself with the math right now for some reason. So let's just put some bounce lands into play here. Pick this up, play a Grazer, put in a Growth Chamber again, float, pick up the Gruul Turf. I think I'd rather have the blue sources in play. Here's Titan, always yield. Oh, and our opponent just concedes. That's a bit of an early concession, but you know what? I will take it. Let me tell our opponent good games. And for the record, I don't think their deck is bad. Alrighty, well, that was a very fast and decisive match. I'm not used to Hardened Scales being such a quick match. It's definitely a deck that always scares me in general, just because, especially as a control player, being aware of what your opponent was capable of doing when they have several, counter-doubling effects and, different possible threats and whatnot. I always felt like I would just lose out of the blue against Hardened Scales as a control player. As an Amulet player, you kind of have Engineered Explosives to just completely flip the matchup in half. And of course, if they nature's claim your amulet, then you might be in trouble. But if you can manage to avoid that, then generally you're doing pretty good. And I guess the amulet matchup against Hardened Scales is pretty good. You do occasionally have to play around something like Dismember as well. But anyways, very interesting match, very entertaining match for sure. And if you agree with that, then show your support by liking, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff. And I'm not going to shill any longer. I'm not going to waste your time. So, this is Red Face Menace, signing off.